Hey, this is Brett Bumeter. I'm with Warren Whitlock, and today on Zeta Mining, we're going to be covering the problem with the app for that syndrome. How are you doing today, Warren?
Just fine. I got an app for that.
Apparently, just about everybody does. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about apps and how there's maybe too many of them, or maybe too many apps for some of the wrong things. Just to throw some numbers out to kind of kick things off, there are about 1.3 million apps in the Android App Store and about 1.2 million in the Apple App Store, with the latest numbers I could find. And in general, we want to focus in, though, not just on the total number. There's a lot of apps, and that's part of the problem, just finding the apps you want. But there's a lot of apps for things that are kind of useless, or things that don't do things, or things that could have been put together all into one big thing. You see a lot of news sites, websites that have apps. You see a lot of musicians and artists and folks that have their own apps for some strange reason. We see podcasts on Android are forced to have apps because there's no centralized podcast store on the Android platform, so they actually force all the podcasters to go create their own apps. And there's just a lot of things like that. So we've come at this story a couple different ways, Warren, over the last couple days. I think I initially saw it based on something that you posted a couple days ago yourself through Facebook, talking about are we basically overdone with the whole app thing?
Well, I've been having some fun with it, and actually, I just posted a few minutes ago on somebody's. Somebody actually was talking about a new app this morning. We saw an app for it's a new Instagram app that competes with what Vine does and is a better way to do. Oh, it actually smooths out videos, so it's actually a useful tool. But does it need a separate app? Who knows? Whatever. And they actually were moving on a little from discussing that and discussing whether or not it's some war between Facebook and Twitter and whatever. And I just kind of ignored all of it and posted as a joke, saying like I thought all the apps were over and we shut down the store, because in the past week we've seen all sorts of things like, everything but death of the App Store, and so that was my joking approach to it. What we have is there is no way that anybody can use 1 million apps.
Right, way too many.
Yeah, there are.
I don't care how big your iPhone or your Android memory is; it'll never download them all.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you start looking at the time to download and the time to launch it and set it up and try it. Even the most busy reviewer, one person will just never get to all the apps, and that's okay. I'd like to compare it to the market for books. Way long ago. Let's only go back to about the time I was born. There's something like 50,000 books in print total, we've seen that went up, but not by much until about a decade ago, when we got up to the point of, through self-publishing and some other phenomena that came out in the 90s, we got up to the point where we actually had millions. I think when by the time Amazon opened in '95, there were over 1 million books in print that they were able to catalog, and a lot of the listings went to nothing or out of print. And then when I got involved in books about a decade ago, there was 100,000 a year coming out, so it had really ramped up. Compare that to a time in my lifetime when there was only 50,000 books in print total. There were more books out there, but it's just that was the number in print.
And just to give that there's 77,000 book apps. Now, those aren't just the books; those are the book apps in the Android library alone today. Right. And those are just Android apps for books. Those aren't not necessarily the books themselves.
And then we get into the Kindle. When it came out, then it became possible for anybody to take any number of pages, even I believe there's some restrictions where it won't let you upload a single page, so I won't say even a single page, but basically anything you can upload as a document can become a book. Anything, let's just say 10 pages, 20 pages, something like that. You can make a very short book, and you can give it away for free or sell it for next to nothing. And on just that format alone, there are now millions of books per year put out, new titles. So, when we start talking about are there too many apps, I just like to put that in perspective. All the books, all the podcasts, all the blogs are all things that could wind up with a button on your phone. Because if what you like is, kayaking in Maine, you can, there's a guy writing a blog in Maine about kayaking, and you can make that into an icon and stick it up on your phone. And you can actually make an icon even if all you're doing is pointing to a website. You don't have to go to any app store. There's ways and tools to do this. I don't know anybody who's doing it, but just like you can save a bookmark into an icon and put it, usually comes out looking like your browser's default icon, and stick it up on your screen or to any Word doc or to anything, any file on your computer, you can wind up putting on your desktop and keep it there. So when we start looking at that, it's not just the millions in the stores, it's that times a factor of, a million people doing other things with it.
So we've covered essentially the fact that there's a developing problem, the snowballing effect of people creating more and more apps, 40 to 50,000 a day in the Android world alone, probably similar numbers in Apple, and based on the numbers from I think it's AppBrain, 10 to 25% of those apps are low quality per their view of what low quality is. So it's not all, they may not all be garbage. They may actually have some functionality for 75% of them or more. But it brings up the question of, even if they're good apps, you're not necessarily going to be able to find what you're looking for because there's millions of them. And discovery becomes a huge problem
with the book thing. I mean, I could have 1,000 books in my collection, and I have a very, very small percentage of the books that are available to purchase. I pick what I want and I put it on my shelf. So the fact that there are a lot of them, it appeals to the long tail, that kayaking in Maine app that most of the world doesn't need. The economics of creating something digital and sticking it in a store, it's there. I think what we're really talking about is how to navigate that glut of apps and putting them in one store or one. I mean, the categories, everything about it. It just becomes a filing nightmare.
It's a filing nightmare. It's a storage nightmare. One of the challenges that smartphone makers have is, they put limits on the space. Now you can get cards to put on there and carry more apps, but running an app from a card on your smartphone isn't necessarily going to be as fast as running it from the drive on the smartphone. And it's also just the general clutter, and with multitasking on smartphones these days, you've got multiple apps running, so now you have to go through and either close them all down or close off multiple apps just to get some better processing speed out of your smartphone, because there's a number of issues. So people today, even when they do find the app that they're looking for, if they make it past the discovery process, they then have to juggle, do I really want to, as A, it's got to fit on my phone, and B, I may have to delete something else just to fit it on my phone, and then C, I've got to put it somewhere where I can find it and manage it and all the button things that you mentioned just a couple minutes ago. And so app developers, if they want to be successful, they are now, in a situation where they've got this higher and higher level of a barrier to entry to surpass. It's not just about the cost of building the app. Just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. You have to build it, show them that it's useful, and then show them that it's even more useful than the other app that they already have taken the time to download, buy, or whatever. And, they have to get rid of it in order to bring in a new one. Granted, drive space is supposed to keep getting cheaper and lower, but cell phone manufacturers don't necessarily like that concept. I
personally have hundreds of apps on my iPhone, and no no problem with. Now I've had things happen where I filled up memory because I had too many books or videos or music. Or actually, photos is another one where I just don't ever delete anything, and it does get filled up. So I've done a few things like that. But the apps themselves, I just see my first iPad. I think I cleaned off because I was reaching its limits. Now I just don't see that problem at all, and I don't have the largest iPad.
I run into it all the time myself. Some of those apps are almost a gigabyte in size these days. Some of them are only 10, 20 megabytes, not that big a deal.
Yeah.
Some of them are pushing up on a gigabyte in space and can easily take up, just as much space
Right.
as a 2-hour movie that you might download.
So, here's my solution. We need to develop an app that just goes out and deletes all the apps on your phone, installs the Zetamining button right on the home screen, and forces its way in, and then anytime you think you got too many apps, you push that, and it clears off everything else, and then puts our smiling faces up there, to tell you really how to operate your phone. That's
right,
it. The one app you need. Right, exactly. And it will be the app of Brett and Warren saying, you don't need the rest of the apps, just watch our show. We'll tell you everything you need to know. So, and I assume there's, I'm joking, but I assume there's some thought of that, of I need to clean it off, I have to have less clutter. To me, take a look around at my set. It's, I'm not organized. I, drop everything everywhere, whatever on the top of the file, fine. There are people I know that have that clean desk syndrome that, I pity you for people that have to be cleaning all the time. And you want to clean it up, do whatever. Here's how I find an app on my phone. I swipe down and push the first letter of the app, and
well, you have to know the app though before you can find it, right?
I have to do what?
You're talking about an existing app on your phone, or an app that you've heard about that you want to add?
Right. No, my rule of thumb is if it's an app I think I could use, I just go ahead and download it. And so that really becomes to the point of, if I see that it's 99 cents, it's not that the 99 cents is a barrier to whether or not I think there's functionality or anything. Even if I'm trying it once and discarding it, it's 99 cents. But the problem is that, I'll go download 2, 3 apps at the same time and never look at it again. And just the 99-cent barrier is enough for me to say, like, let me wait until I really figure out I want to use that one. Now, finding it again becomes a problem because there's no wish list or shopping cart in a mobile app store. So it's get it now or not. And that adds to people downloading apps. But I don't think there's an end to it. When I collected vinyl records, I didn't stop. And when it became possible to get CDs and put them in less space, I never stopped. And then, and then MP3s, I had to have all of those plus more. And now I'm streaming all sorts of things and wondering what I'm going to do with this music I have stored up some other place. It's an ongoing problem that modern life has. But what I'm getting at is, I think there's a huge opportunity for someone to solve these kind of things. And as I've looked and I've talked to app developers, a lot of them are in the same boat, where somebody that downloads 50 apps a month just to review them is deleting most of those apps. And I think the next step is, with fast transmission speeds and storage costs not being an issue, we're going to get to the point where you want to do something, you have subscribed to that app services or whatever, and once you're in, then you can do that. Think about in the Apple Store, it's called Purchases, and everything is on the cloud that I ever purchased. So one of the things about downloading a free app that I end up never using, it's always bookmarked as being something there. Now, I have no way to organize that stuff, no way to delete it, so I don't accidentally succumb to seeing an app I downloaded 6 months ago and thought was wonderful and was a complete waste of my time. And then I see it again in my purchased app and I'm going like, well, oh, I must have forgot to put that on the phone. Maybe I was downloading on the iPad that day. And I'll download it again, waste the time again. So I
There's
think
no way to archive apps, essentially, is the problem. You
yeah,
can't have sub-storage where you have removed it off of your phone, but it's readily available for that one time a year that you might need,
right.
the travel guide to wherever or, whatever it might be.
So yeah, and a well-designed app is going to be able to get there. And for one thing, we see it in apps that work on a desktop for years now. That you'll say you want to install something, and a small file will be downloaded, and if for any reason you don't get the whole file, that it'll go back and try to get that the next time you launch it.
Yep.
And so that idea of not having to put, and back when memory was a lot more expensive, it was common to have an outline of the app that came up, and then it went out and it said, "Where insert the CD? We've got more of this." You're using language tools, and we didn't expect you to do word processing in French.
So there's another problem related to this that I just came across earlier today. There's an article out on Wired. They're talking about the ability for 3D printers to print skeleton keys that can pick high security locks. And basically, all that's required is someone takes a picture of the keyhole, and then they can print off a skeleton key, which they bump with a hammer to actually open. All they need is the picture and the depth of the potential keyhole, which is relatively easy to do. You don't necessarily, it used to be you'd have to be a locksmith or you'd have to go to one to get such a thing. And they have ethics and or are supposed to, but it points out the problem that this app for that problem isn't just one that's in the virtual world. It's not just on our smartphones, our iPads, our computers. It's going to be one that is going to overlay itself in the real physical world, as well as the app for that starts to solve physical problems and challenges. Not all of those are going to be positive, when essentially every key in the world is now rendered useless or relatively insecure. When somebody runs we don't have mobile 3D printers in the back of somebody's car today, but we're probably not too far away from that. Somebody could drive down the street, take a picture, zap out a key, and get into whatever they needed to on the fly. So we might be looking at a future in 10 or 20 years where many of us will have to find some new upgrade for our our houses or our locking systems.
Well, I've got two answers for that. First of all, I had lunch with a guy yesterday, and we were discussing local startups and how we had watched one at a startup weekend that was in the key business. There's two here. There's one that's actually making a secure way to keep all your keys. I'm not really sure. I saw it, but I'm not really sure how the technology works. But basically, it's a cool key carrier, and so we have that company. Just to mention that. But what I'm really thinking of is the company that was working mostly digital locks. And I said, yeah, what's the update on them? And he says, well, as a matter of fact, they're growing like crazy. They have a deal with the Teslas, because we have a bunch. 100 comes to mind, but that sounds high. We have a bunch of Teslas parked someplace in downtown Las Vegas that you access without a key. If you're authorized to use one of the Teslas, you go in and on your mobile phone, very secure. The way the Tesla works is the handle to open it is recessed, and to have that pop out and be available, you have to have logged into the car. Car knows who you are and lets you in. So I see that coming. So that's the kind of the challenge, and the solution there is, yeah, keys become insecure, but they always were. The difference is the speed at which somebody can get past that kind of security. We have, if I lock my keys in the car, I like that the locksmith can get in 30 seconds. But it's and I think it goes even beyond just the ethics of it. It's the there's so many easy ways you can smash a window and get into any car. So you know, the
Well, there's always
electronic things
ways
are better.
in, but there's one of the, and this is just the key situation, but one of the challenges there is knowing if someone got in or not. You know,
Right. So we
sometimes
get
you want to, it's nice when the window's broken because then you know that your car was broken into. When there's no
yeah.
sign that was, you may be surprised in ways that you don't want to be surprised.
Yeah, you may have somebody borrowing your car every night to run errands while you sleep. And
Right
of
in the
course,
back seat,
yeah,
planting something, taking something out
right.
that you didn't know was going,
Well,
all those things, right? So, and those are
and
just car scenarios. It doesn't, it's, and I don't really care about cars or houses. It's just the concept that this unintended
well,
consequence of apps solving anything rapidly, such that
yeah.
you don't necessarily have to personally know, invest the time to learn some technical thing because you can
I want to get back to the
download something and
right.
solve the problem
I
or
want to
cause a
get
problem quickly.
I want to get back to the apps, but first, the whole car thing is maybe in the future. I like the idea that I work at home during the day and take the car out in the afternoon or evening. My personal work schedule is that if somebody needs to use my car, and we've experienced this on a very small scale where my daughter currently doesn't have a vehicle, lives fairly close by, rides her scooter over to my house, and my wife lends her my car. And I'm upstairs in the home studio and don't even know that it's happening. And I walk downstairs and I'm going, where's my car? I was going to run an errand, and I don't know. In the future, though, that's a very easy scenario to
Mhm.
solve. Oh, yeah, text her, tell her that I need the car, and, in 15 minutes she's back from her errand or whatever, and life goes on. No big deal. But what if a stranger could do that? If somebody in my neighborhood occasionally needs a car, sees my car sitting there, and they want to be able to run an errand, and we work out the financial details or whatever, so that they have the on their mobile app, they can push a button and use my car. It lets me know. It lets me know how long they're going to be gone, and through rules or through my personal approval, I can do that. I can actually be a lot more generous with the vehicle that's sitting in my driveway most of the time.
So you're
So
saying we
there's
need an app that allows us to ride share without a
yeah,
driver,
well, there's
a
people.
driverless Uber or Lyft, right?
Right. There's people working on those type of things, and I think the more common example is the drill. Every home does
Yep.
not need to own a power drill. Sorry, Black and Decker, who's brought the cost and convenience down to where we all can own that kind of a power tool easily. But a lot of us just don't need it that often. When I need a drill and I know there's one in the neighborhood that somebody's available to let me use, and it could be $1, $10, it could be free. It doesn't, the economics are there, but then somebody can do that because maybe I get to borrow the drill for free because I do lend out my car, and whatever. And those kind of things come. When you start thinking about the stuff that's possible, positive and negative, the security issue, a lot more apps are coming. So we
Well,
get
it's
into the
a
situation of
print
how
on
do we find
demand,
them?
share on demand, print on demand, borrow on demand,
Right.
use on demand type of environment that the technology allows us to go to because we can logistically organize our lives a little bit more efficiently, and we don't have to create or manufacture
Right.
all stuff
And
that we, is redundant.
one of the things that came out of the big article that was out, it was actually a study that was more or less just showing the numbers, and then the press took that and tried to say, is this a softening in the number of downloads? And everybody has a story of, I was downloading all sorts of apps and now I don't, and so and the apocryphal stories there turn it into, well, it's a giant trend. Nobody downloads apps anymore. Because me and my friend were talking and we don't. I don't think there's anything to that part of it. I think it's just made up. What the important number in there that we're reminded of, I'd heard before, but it's as much as 80-90% don't download an app in a month, and a large number of those just don't download apps at all. You get the phone, you make phone calls, you do what you were used to doing with it. It's a smartphone. It could do a lot more, but it's like the blinking light clock on your VCR. which, you know, was predominantly, most everybody had times when they just didn't bother to set the clock, even if they knew how, and then a lot of people didn't even know how. And that wasn't because we don't like the idea of a clock on a VCR near the TV that reminds us we're watching too much television. It's that, or what time I have to stop. Oh yeah, I got to go pick up the kids. I've been sitting here watching this movie and forgot what, you know, about the real world. So the idea of putting a clock on the VCR was great. Getting people to use it became a problem because it was tough to manage. And now they've come out with such as if there is a clock, it's automatically set. It, you know, goes out to a server and gets the time. It's set correctly. You know, changes for daylight savings time. Things get better that way. So I foresee we need a lot more like that. So when somebody wants to borrow a drill or you know, get a ride someplace or whatever, I think most people are getting to where they're comfortable using the phone for that. But you know, there's a big gap in the people that know how to do it and the ones that want to do it. And so if I just say to Siri, you know, I need a drill, then, and Siri goes out and finds it for you, or hopefully something that works a lot better than Siri works for me. And at some point it says, this is how you do it. And I think some of the promise of that has been in the QR codes, which are probably as good as dead, but you know, the idea of, I put up a sign in the neighborhood saying lost cat. If you find the cat, you know, click here. Or if you,
right.
You know, you can
then
send
somebody's going to go download the QR app to read the sign.
Right, and I can say, and instead of picking up a stray cat and look around the neighborhood to see if it belongs to anybody, I can take a picture of it, post it. The person looking for a cat can do that. There's a lot more. There's the serendipity that is not even what we call an app now. I'm not going to download a lost cat app so that when I find a cat, I can take a picture of it. But somebody can build that functionality, keep that database, offer that service, and then have it interface with apps that I already know about. So I think we're looking for a post-app culture where we don't make an app for everything. At the same time, you know, just give up on the idea of what you're seeing on the phone is buttons to go to do one function. I think they need to be more integrated.
It's true. One of the challenges with any smartphone is the interface and how big the buttons are, where they are. Now, if you're on an Apple device, they're all the standard button sizes, although they might be in the little folder things. If you're on a Windows device, then you're going to have tiles that are a number of different sizes. If you're on an Android device, then the screens might take a different form or shape, and the app buttons within there are somewhat standard. But you know, there's this hodgepodge of how to make the user interface useful so that you can find all those apps once you actually have them on your device. Some work well for some people and some don't. It takes a lot of getting used to if you're switching from an iPhone to an Android to an iPhone to a Windows phone, whatever direction you might be going. You've got to do a lot of mental judo to fit your brain into this new interface because all of them are very different, right. And then get used to the apps and, you know, replace your whatever gaps you might have with the apps to get things going.
The fascinating thing about the search by spelling feature that I'm relying on so much now is when that thing came out, I go like, though, that's pretty cool that it's a universal search, and I played with it and whatnot, and then I actually felt, I don't know what you call it, guilt or fear or frustration by the fact that I was doing that so often and couldn't figure out where I'd put the apps, because I have a lot of the same apps on an iPad and an iPhone, and it's my account on the old iPad that like is kind of the community iPad for the family. So, you know, my apps can be on 3 different devices. I use all 3 of them on occasion. And I can't find anything. And I got to swipe down and use the letter, which is working for me. But at the same time, every time I do it, I'm going like, oh man, this is frustrating. I wish I had them organized. And
that works for me, except for those like that works for me until I run into those occasions where
can't remember the name.
can't remember the name because it's some goofy, funny, silly spelling of a non-word
Right.
type of thing that doesn't really describe what the app does, because they don't really have the app descriptions. You can't find the app by the description or any of the, the keywords that might be in there about the app. And
So yeah,
B,
so there's the. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I just forgot what B was, but
Okay,
I
good.
don't have an app
Well,
to remember that. But
the guilt part of it, guilt is a funny word, and I'm not talking about, I'm sitting around saying, oh, I've screwed up, woe is me, or anything like that. But the twinge of I should be doing something differently comes to me when I'm sitting watching television, and I think, oh, I could be productive. I can do this during the commercial, or multitask or whatever. And I open up the iPad, and the next thing I know is it's very simple to open up the game. One of the things I do when there's a couple of maze games I play, but they're only when I'm sitting doing something totally useless and just to engage the brain a little bit more. And and I can get carried away and do that for an hour, and the next thing you know, because I'm feeling that I could have been doing something here. I could have checked the email or whatever. Well, checking email, logging into Facebook, tweeting something is all something I can do multitasking-ish with the TV on. I know I don't multitask, but I can divert my attention over to the iPad, and forget what's on TV, and life is pretty good. But doing that with check my bank balance, I can remember what what letter I need to put in to get to the bank balance, but I may not. I may just go ahead and say, well, you know what, I'll check that later, right now, or during the commercial. Why don't I go ahead and right now just play that game for a while? And so that's where it is. And I think that comes in the confusion of knowing what it is I want and how to get it. Because, for instance, if I want to use the thing to enhance a picture, boy, has this ever happened to you? I want to share with the world some great thing I've just taken it. I want to take a picture of, and before I open it up, I've got to choose which camera app I'm going to use. Then I need to choose, am I going to enhance it or not? Am I going to share it out to everybody, or am I going to save it and then go try to enhance it later with something else? And in my case, am I going to be able to read the instructions on the screen if it's my phone? And there's so many ways to do things. There's that, and so yeah, that's the guilt thing. It's kind of like, it's, again, not guilty, but the guilt kind of emotion of, oh, I should be making sure I enhance this photo or make the video come out smooth or put a word bubble on something because I can. And I've experienced that just in this past week of getting far greater engagement from my social networks, which is why I'm there, and finding out that it can take me 30 minutes to construct a tweet when I make sure that I'm putting on, it's just 140 characters. The writing the tweet is easy. The picking the picture, the cropping the picture, the ready is something. If I'm at my desktop and focused on this, I know that I could get 5 or 10 times as many people engaging with it and start more meaningful conversations if I put a little bit more thought in how I put that together. And of course, if I'm marketing something, I certainly want to do that. And so often, because these tools are so easy to access, we'll just go ahead and, yeah, that looks nice in a reply email to somebody, when what you really ought to do is they're saying, like, here's the new presentation, tell me what you think. And well, I'm on my phone, it's hard to hook up, and I just put, yeah, it looks nice, and they know I got it, and I'm not responsible for actually reviewing it. And so again, that's the kind of guilt thing comes in, is what shortcuts am I going to take? I wish I could do this better. Oh, if I really wanted to do this, I put the show on pause, go into my computer, open it up, read it without multitasking, look at it, and say, here's my thoughtful idea on what you pay me to tell you about something. And the funny thing is, at the end of all of that, if you send them, I've done that, and I've sent like a 2-page write-up on on the report and ideas to improve the presentation. And then, a week later in casual conversation, I'll mention, like, were those helpful? And they go like, oh, yeah, and I passed that on to the design team, and I don't know what happened to it. Why was I bothering to do the report in the first place? I could have just said, yeah, it looks good, and they would have got what what they were really looking for was my approval that there wasn't any red flags to stop. So there's so many little things like that. Sorry to get carried away on one, but any of these become something that we can improve. Just like we improve our lives by reading a book and studying something new, or watching another podcast, or listening to an audiobook. And nobody is 100% efficient and can get to all of these things. So it's I think we're just keeping ratcheting up and improving, and look for seeing some more things that make this readily available. That when you need to send a funny picture to somebody, that there's a process somebody can use, and then it universally gets out to where it is. I don't have to decide, am I going to post this on Facebook? Is that person more likely to read it from a text? Those kind of things will start to be into your contact manager. And I say, when I find something on the web and I say, Brett needs to read this, I could actually say to my computer, Brett needs to read this, and it will all have been negotiated and figured out about how we communicate and what we do, and it will know that if I like to put a word bubble on every photo I send, that it'll pop up the thing, what's the text you want for the word bubble, handle it, either show me the results or whatever, and move on to the next thing. We'll be able to tailor the apps down to the individual experience of what we want.
So I guess that's potentially a place to push things back to our audience, to you. Where do you think this is going to end up? Are we going to hit some level of apps that are too many? Are we going to, are you planning on stopping downloading apps, or are you going to keep downloading them at some regular pace? Or, will someday we be able to take these individual little apps, like Warren was describing, 30 minutes put together a tweet, where you're editing pictures and photoshopping, doing Photoshop work? Is there going to be something where we'll be able to take apps and plug them together like Legos almost on the screen, and come up with a cross-functional, bigger app bundle that generates some result for us faster because we need it that way, and 10 other people might need it some completely other way? We've got to, we're growing and changing, and the world is adapting around us. So where is this going to go for you? What are you going to come up with these, bring out of this whole thing in the future? We'd like to hear from you and what you're seeing with this, and maybe we'll bring it up in a future show.
And most of all, what are you going to download Facebook Messenger, or are you just mad at them and you're going to stop using Facebook altogether? That's the one we keep hearing.
Just to call it, I'm not downloading Messenger. I'm not mad at Facebook. I'm totally open on Facebook. I just don't like Facebook Instant Messages. I don't like Twitter DMs either. So yeah. I'm not downloading it. So I'm hoping never to have to really deal with Facebook messages again.
Good. Now we've got that on the record. I hope to show you sometime soon that Facebook Messenger works fantastic.
I'm sure it does. I just don't want to talk to people that way.
I'm having better conversations on Facebook than ever on the private side. But you're right. I'm perfectly comfortable to keep all that in email. I think with the mobile world that we're coming up with something that replaces email eventually. And I don't mean we're going to shut down email and not use it. I mean that there are better ways to communicate, and I haven't seen the stats, but we'll leave that for another show. But that's just one of them. When somebody comes out with splitting an app in two, are you instantly mad? Go ahead and comment. Let's take that on too.
Sounds good. Well, we hope you've enjoyed the show. We hope that maybe this has given you some ideas. Again, we'd like to hear some feedback from you, and you can catch this and future shows on youtube.com/ZetaMining, or check us out at ZetaMining.com. We'd love it if you subscribe, leave us a comment, a reply, give us some ideas for the future, or be a guest on our show. Thanks again.